Hello, welcome everybody to another episode of Lostlikemike, episode 11. I am your host, Mike Gonzalez, and coming at you this week with a little bit more focus. I know it's not been any easier this week. I feel like the windows between the times where I am forcing myself to participate in the outside world, the functional part of my issues is maybe smaller in time frames than the ones where I'm having to really struggle. But I suspect that's that way for a lot of folks. We're all in it right now and kind of juggling our obligations and our uncertainties. It's funny how we don't like talking about them. I certainly don't. It's like naming a dog. I don't want to take ownership of the things that burden me, my anxieties or my struggles. I don't like naming them or talking about them. I should save that for a therapist. But thank you for joining the conversation. Thank you for hanging out. Please like and subscribe and throw comments and email me at lostlikemike@gmail.com. I appreciate the suggestions for the show topics and ideas. Something I have been considering is expounding on different topics that I've brought up in the past, things that I say in passing because I just mention them when they pop into my mind, and I don't really flesh them out as much as I'd like to sometimes. So that's always a possibility. I think part of the appeal of this show to me is that I do it without a lot of forethought, for good or for bad. Not really spelling out an agenda with planned out, catchy little phrases and quotes and sound bites that people can use in arguments with other folks. If something clever comes out, cool. If not, then too bad. If it's funny, it's good. If it's sad, it's okay. I like the idea that I'm not contrived, or I don't want to say I'm not trying, because I do want to share my thoughts and have conversations. It's frustrating because I talk about thanking everybody for the suggestions but it's not, they're few and far between, and a lot of times I'm reaching out to friends and to coworkers and family and associates, people that and and asking about ideas for the show or what they would like to hear more about and so on. So, but I guess the reason that I bring that up is to encourage you to leave those comments, to tell a friend, to email me or message me. Because outside of that, it's really just the thoughts that come to mind or the topics that come up, and I'd like it to be a little bit more symbiotic, a little bit more of a two-way. So sometimes I think about like what triggers me into I can have a really good amount of time where I'm doing okay. I remember I was consistently exercising, I was dieting, I lost a tremendous amount of weight, and I was really thriving. And around the time when my daughter was born, and I didn't see it coming. I remember it clearly though. She was, right out the gate. She's perfect in every way. But on the first day that she was born, and the doctors, when they like got all the toes, all the fingers, or what have you, nothing. His early reports, her early reports, I should say, she was a female. Well, anyway, came in and said that she was going to need some follow-ups concerning some concerns that he wanted us to look at. And even then, with her birth and everything, it was that kind of good stress where it was kind of like excitement, and as long as everything was going okay, kind of, But it was within the first year that they decided that she was going to need a surgery. And I remember I was doing well up until we had went out to Houston to this hospital to have this surgery. And I remember driving to Houston with the intention of, thinking things like, well, I'll check if the hotel has a gym. If not, I'll find paths to run around the area. Sort of plotting my choices of what I was going to order from various rest stops, trying to figure out how to do that, like manage that, keeping healthy while eating out. And I was at some gas station and I ate something, and I guess I ate my feelings one time or whatever, but it was just a train wreck. She was so small and being put under, and it freaked me out. I swear all of my white came in. Incidentally, on a side note, I dyed my beard. No big deal. If you're looking at it, you could still see plenty of white, and I swear that the white came in this week. Came back this week. I'll tell you why. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. Just the trauma of that experience, obviously, and it's apples to oranges. I know that there's so many children that struggle with these unfair illnesses and from birth, just struggles. And I know that her health is a blessing despite whatever challenges that she has. I'm thankful for every day that we get to spend together. So but this week I find out that she's going to have another surgery coming up here in 2 months, and probably sometime before then is going to have a dental surgery. So 2 different surgeries. And this is after I'd convinced myself that she wasn't going to be needing procedures until later on in the future, because they had mentioned something about revisiting the prospect of having another surgery, but not until she was in her teens, which I was trying to wrap my mind around already. But it's just, I feel for her having to go through it. I get it. That it's her that's going through it and not me. What I'm trying to say is that in a lot of ways I wish it was me instead of her. It's like yeah, I mean, it causes me anxiety, but it's only because of her. If that makes any sense. Everything's in relative to what my kids go through, you know. My son has his struggles as well, but you know, there's such a wide gap. It's almost like 2 different conversations. You know, my son is getting ready to graduate from high school, and that's a whole different set of driver's license issues, and he's very entrepreneurial. He's starting his own business, and I'm very proud of all that. He's got a lot of gumption, or a lot of grit. You know, it's actually cool to watch, because he's brave in ways that I wasn't at his age. It's he's got that sort of ability to walk up to strangers and sell his business, you know, where I could do it in the construct of a retail outlet. You know, I was I used to sell clothes. We'll have to tell that story one day. But I was when I was in high school, I did a co-op program, and in the construct of, you know, in a store, in a mall, I can sell stuff. But you know, if you ask me to walk up to somebody and offer to do the yard work or handyman work or what have you, I would just about. I used to say, like, I've sung in front of thousands of people, but you know, I don't know. The prospect of talking to one person doesn't seem as cool. Seems like a scary notion. Like I could talk into a camera. Who cares? But you know, relating to somebody, it's different. But yeah, just a different animal that one is. Very proud of him for that, though. You take that on one side of the spectrum, he's already kind of dealing with some of this adult stuff, and I know pretty soon he's going to be thinking about getting his own place, or ugh. But then there was my little one. They were talking about class pictures this week. She's very photogenic, you know what I mean? But it's funny because she's got kid teeth, you know what I mean? They're not all grown out evenly yet, and there's still some baby ones around there, you know what I mean? And all the time that I was growing up, I never smiled in pictures, in class pictures or whatever. Just self-conscious, So she took her school pictures. And here's what I love about her, is that she was a little bit self-conscious, right? And she ended up taking these 3, because I saw the proofs. So super adorable. Her smiles. She did variations, but like kind of the wide grin, the slight smile, you know what I mean? But never opening her mouth, never showing her teeth. But to her credit, she asked to do retakes, because they offered retakes later in the week for, they were going to be, I guess, I don't know how it works, for whatever reason. Because her mom works at the school, so she's aware of the retakes, because it's just part of their whole deal. Anyway, but she requested to take retakes so that she could get over her smile issue. Like she just wanted to get over it and smile with her big smile. I was very proud of her for that. I think it's sweet. I still think she looked adorable in the first ones. I mean, I'm sure she looked fine in this next picture too, but me, I was like, I couldn't even smile my whole life. But anyway, I wonder if you have any irrational fears. I mean, all fears are kind of like, for the most part. I mean, obviously you can have a bit of fear of a burglar breaking in your house and assaulting your family, or something, where there's a basis for it. But like I've never flown before my whole life, but there's a fear of flying. I think the basis of it is not wanting to give up control to a pilot, or to be in this, like, I've never been a really good passenger in a car either, but I'm saying the notion is whether, if I was driving or flying the plane, would I have a different attitude about it? I don't know. Or is because there's, as they say, there's a lot of reasons to suggest that the flying would be safer than driving, etc. It would be there's really, to be scared of it is just sort of baseless, you would think. For the longest, I had this fear of elevators. I was famous for it. not famous for, but family, well, my people knew that I was afraid. I remember we were at this radio station, and the only way to get there to do this radio interview for the band was to go up this elevator. And I remember thinking of the sacrifice that I made for the good of the band, you know. It didn't come up that often, you know, the flying thing, you know. One time I think there was something about a record label and the prospect of flying to go meet them. But touring and everything was always driving. Just because you hit dates on the way there, so on. It's just the way it was. Plus you had to haul your equipment across the country. I mean, that's how you did it. But I mean, there's the Tower of Americas in San Antonio, Texas, which is like the elevator goes 30 miles an hour, and obviously it looks like just it's just this ginormous tower with one long elevator going all the way up to the top. And I rode that once just to prove that I could do it. I remember thinking because they used to have this race to go, it would be like a bunch of people running up the flights of stairs all the way up to the top of this tower. And thinking, well, if I freak out too much and I can't go down the elevator, I'll just go down the stairs. I'm thinking that was a rational, legitimate thought. It was ridiculous. But, and then if I remember correctly, because this was some time back, the front of the elevators you could see through is like glass. So that's stupid, right? I mean, I could barely contain myself. But that fear, I don't think, was baseless. Because I remember we were doing shows with the group, with my band in Houston. And we were at some like hotel. God help me if I remember the story wrong. The only thing I can remember about the story was that it was in Houston and that it was an elevator, okay? I don't remember if that was our hotel or why we were there. 17th floor though, okay? Bear with me. And it was an old building, second part, important. And I was with my guitar player, and there was a sign on the door of the outside of the elevator. And it said maximum occupancy 4. God, I wish I had a photograph. I don't know the name of the hotel. Let's just suspend a disbelief. Can you just pretend like you believe me? Because it's true, but whatever. And he was like, dude, we're got to go to the 17th floor. So you're going to go on the elevator. It's just get over it. And so we decided to go on the elevator, him and I. And as we're getting in the elevator, these two really heavy, really big women come onto the elevator with us. And already I'm like doing the math. Like, but then they've got a little girl with them. right? And so already I was thinking, like, you kind of count as 1.5 each. I mean, I would say that's an extra person, plus your kid. Jesus. Like, and sure enough, somewhere between the ground floor and the 17th floor, somewhere up the elevator, it just stops. And nobody said a word, right? I'm looking at the guitar player. His eyes kind of go like, this is happening, sort of like, don't panic. But in my mind, I'm thinking, I've got to keep it together. Everything's okay. And then I think one of the ladies said something like, oh no, whoa, like starts whatever. And the little girl looks at the mom, or looks at the lady, one of the big ladies, and just opens up crying. Just starts freaking out. And then the ladies are looking at us and like freaking out. And I'm like, I mean, what a nightmare. And then, I don't even know how this happened, but somehow I had the bright idea of thinking that we were on a floor, like maybe we're on the 17th floor or whatever floor, and I just had to open these doors to this thing, elevator, and we were between floors. Was that how it was? Well, whatever it was not level to the ground. Maybe we were like where you see a bit of the ground. Whatever it was traumatic. And we got off, obviously, and I went up 17 flights of stairs for the rest of that engagement there in Houston. Which is funny because in my mind, it looks very heroic, ripping the doors open, which is, and in my mind, it's like evenly halfway between, and you know what I mean, which is completely unrealistic, but there it is in my mind, and I can see like the darkness, or whatever's like not on the floor, whatever. Stupid. But yeah, so that's not the origin story of my fear of elevators, but it didn't help, and it kind of made me sort of a wreck when it comes to elevators. Now, in the job that I have, I am constantly on the elevators in this big high-rise building. Like, I'm going up and down between 10 floors. I think there's, more to it, but my company occupies mainly those 10, floors. So now I can't afford to think about my fear. I wonder if like secretly though, or subconsciously, my other anxieties and fear are being exacerbated by having to deal with these other fears on a constant basis. It would make sense, right? Like, because sometimes there's like 6 elevators to choose from, and you hit the button and then you wait to see which of the 6 the little light turns on, the boop, and going up or down. which, on a side note, like I always hear it has this voice that comes on. It's this female, and she says, going up, or fourth floor going up, fourth floor going down. And every time I hear her say going down, I hear that line from that one song. I mean, research this stuff before I start talking, right? Loaded gun complex. Cock it and pull it. You know what I'm talking about. Doesn't matter. Going down, down, whatever. Anyway, so every time I get in the elevator and I'm going down, I hear that line from that song. I mean, this is the hard-hitting news that y'all look forward to hearing on the show. Most of the things that when I talk about, I never really want to get into like all the bad things that I've done in terms of while drinking alcohol. And why it comes to mind, I don't know. But it's just to say that a lot of bad choices and a lot of things that I'm not proud of can be traced to not being sober when I did them. But I thought instead to focus on a positive time, or a positive memory anyway, that I had. There's a few and far between, but I remember it was a time when I came back when I first graduated from high school. I went to college for a very short amount of time. We can get into it on another day, but the long and the short of it was that I went to a private liberal university. I went to St. Edward's University in Austin, Texas. Beautiful campus, beautiful school. I have nothing negative to say about it, other than the fact that it was wicked expensive. Because I had scholarships and I had all this kind of financial aid, and I still was going to owe a ton of money. But I was, if you believe it or not, I was just this kid on my own who was following teacher's advice to go to college. You know, it was that after school special stuff. I mean, my folks had no expectation of me going to college. I mean, they didn't have any idea. They found out that I was going to college in the summer when I moved up to Austin with this girl. Stupid. When I moved up to Austin, I decided to move up. And then I told him I'm just going to spend the summer there in Austin and then move into my dorm. Maybe someday we'll talk about that story too. You know, her in particular, you don't think that that age is a factor when it comes to like when you're 17 and you think you know everything. You're 18, you think you know everything, and at the time I thought I was emotionally mature, or you know, in the relationship that I was in. But in retrospect, I mean, geez, even to this day, I'm not, I don't, there's so much I'm learning or whatever, but hindsight's 2020, right? But I remember she was a fantastic human being. She deserved so much better than what she got from me. But I remember, just looking back and uh, I don't know how I functioned in the world, but mm, it's funny. I'm having the conversation in my head, and I'm not saying the things out loud that I probably would give the statement's context. But maybe another day we'll get into it. It's just to say that she deserved better than what she got, and she dropped me off on the front steps of my college, with everything I owned in the world in one duffel bag, and um, and she wanted me to experience college to its fullest extent and really live life and be there, which was very mature of her. I'm sure she would have wanted to share that experience with me, but yeah, um, I don't know. I try not to look back at life stories, and I keep seeming a lot of times I come to see myself as the villain in the story. It's not cool. But I think that you have to forgive yourself for being a kid, for being stupid, or for making choices that were the best that you could do with what what you knew of the world. So anyway, it'll make for good stories. But so I anyway went to college out there, but realized very quickly it was wicked expensive, and I was not ready for college. Um, wouldn't trade that. I wouldn't trade the time for anything, though. I mean, it was expensive, but I met a lot of cool people and had a lot of experiences that were well outside of my comfort zone, and I could do a whole show about that one. But came back to my home, and I'll skip ahead to a couple of years later. I had found myself newly single and um, lost, and just kind of coming off of a real bad bender where I was drunk all the time, and I was in a bad way, but I was kind of in this weird place, and I was home with my parents, and my parents didn't drink alcohol or do anything. I think my mom smoked cigarettes when I was a kid, and then I smoked cigarettes when I came back. I somehow convinced her to pick the habit back up, and then she quit smoking again. But anyway, I am getting off track. One day, we got to talking, my mother and I said, the one one regret that I would have is that we never got to drink alcohol together. I said this to my mother, right, for whatever reason. And now keep in mind, she doesn't drink at this point anymore. She did in her youth, I guess, or maybe in, decades before this conversation. And there I am with my bad influence. I'm telling her that we never had the opportunity to drink together. And my mom and I were very similar in a lot of ways. Her story is this very interesting story. And if she ever gave me permission, I would tell her story. But needless to say, to paint the picture of who my mother is, I will just say that she reminds me of myself. But here is this woman who doesn't drink and decides, for whatever reason, that we were going to do it. We were going to have a party, a drinking party, just her and I, and we were going to get drunk. And that was our plan. I remember we bought, I don't know if anybody remembers or if it's even still a thing, but we bought a bunch of Bud Ice. I don't even know if they still sell that, but I don't even know what possessed us to buy a bunch of that. But it was a nice evening. Like I want to say it was like the fall, or because it was cold out, right? And there was a lot of leaves everywhere. That's important. But in the backyard of the old house where we lived, the haunted house, which I'll tell that story another day too. We lived in this haunted house on the south side of town. But it had this nice big backyard. And I remember it was cold enough that we were wearing jackets. And we just started talking about life, man. We started telling stories about our old days where the neighbors would come over and have some cocktails and drink, and why it all stopped, or why she didn't, and we were laughing and telling jokes and whatever. And pretty quickly we were just drinking way too much, way too fast. And then I had the brilliant idea I said, man, I'm cold, you cold? Yeah, we're cold. But I said, I'm going to get all these. What about we had this big barbecue pit. And I said, why don't I get all the sticks together and I'll make us a bonfire, or like a fire in the barbecue pit. And she thought it was a good idea. And I put some branches But then I couldn't find a lot of branches, so then I started throwing all these piles of leaves in the barbecue pit. And then that was bad. It was, burning leaves, and it was a bad smell and smoky and whatever. But we thought it was the funniest thing. And then my mom loves owls. It's like her spirit animal. She loves owls. And in this wires, I guess telephone wires or whatever, electrical wires, whatever. And in the backyard, I spot this owl just way up there, perched up there and staring down at us. And I was like, Mom, it's an owl, And we started like freaking out about this giant owl that we're looking at in the middle of the night. But then I'm convinced, I start thinking, oh man, like that's lechuza, man. That's like, it's white, so it's white owl. It's like this demon owl that's pissed off that we're drinking alcohol or whatever. So I said, Mom, like that's what, it's a evil spirit, And the only way we can get rid of it is if we have to curse at it and yell obscenities at it. And by this point, she was like, whatever, like, okay. And my mom can cuss like a sailor. I probably talked about that before, because she does. Well, she doesn't all the time, but when if push comes to shove, she's pretty handy with an F-bomb when needed. Just kidding. But that night, we were on our game, and both of us started yelling just the most creative, obscenities up at this poor owl. And with bottles in our hand, and I was laughing and smiling, and she was laughing, and then my dad comes out the back door of the house, just out of his mind, yelling at us to come inside. Get in this house right now. What are you doing out there right now? Get inside this house, you crazy. Anyway. Oh man, and that just had me about falling around the floor laughing about how ridiculous we must have looked to him. These burning leaves out of his barbecue pit. The stench of burning leaves and smoke and these two crazy people yelling at owls in the middle of the night. Oh man. But I'll tell you that I've been going to have breakfast with my mom and my sister and family over the past couple weeks on Sundays. And we talked about that day, that story. And we both sort of said almost at the same time, we never talked about it after that day. But we both sort of said at the same time that one of our favorite memories. I know it was one of mine. And to hear her say it, it really it makes me happy to think that, and all of the piles of regrets and of piles of bad decisions that I've ever made and associated with substances. It's nice to have one good one. Yeah. I mean, I don't mean to sound like there's only been one time in my life where I had a good time. That's all I'm saying. But it's easier to sort of to think about the negatives, right? So I just wanted to focus on one of the positives. So I remember this one time, real quick story, but then I'll call it a day. I had gone with, I think there was a buddy of mine, and in high school, we had a love-hate relationship. I mean, it's just he liked to bust my balls, and I was like not really a fan of it. But we were going to a party, and he wanted to buy some weed. So I think the way the story went, he knew where to go, but he didn't want to go alone. Can we say it like that? I think that was the truth. I obviously never had done that in my life. And here I am with this guy. We end up in this apartment complex, and then we go into this one apartment, and it was a legitimate family sitting down to dinner the way that a real family does. Like in the living room, there's a TV going on. They got TV trays. You know what I mean? Like, and there I am standing looking like a, 21 Jump Street. I mean, completely out of place. I was in high school. I mean, I had long hair and rock and roll t-shirt or whatever, but I'm saying, like, if there ever was somebody who did not look like they should be doing a drug deal, it was this guy. But that night, so we bought, probably one joint worth. We just bought, like, whatever. And he and I sat on a swing, this one of those bench swings, and we laughed so hard for so long. I thought, I only ever want to smoke weed for the rest of my life, because it was so much fun. That's my dragon, because I never got that ever again. But crying, laughing, the whole night. Jesus, I remember that. It was so much fun. Couldn't tell you what we talked about. Couldn't tell you one joke. I know there was like a couple, like, because he was very funny, but he would tell a joke and we just kept repeating it. Oh man. See? It wasn't just one time. But yeah, very quickly after that, like, I remember once I sat with my ex-wife, and we thought we'd be cool young adults, and we bought some. She bought some. I don't know how we got the pot. We just got some pot, and we both ended up I remember her sliding off of the recliner, and we both were sitting on the floor, freaking out, holding her chest, like thinking that we were dying. That was no fun. That was no fun. If I could be guaranteed that it would be like that first time, I would do it again. But it's never like that. Yeah. Anyway, maybe one of these times we'll get more into all these topics. I like this one. Thank you all for hanging out with me. Thank you for all the comments, the emails to lostlikemike@gmail.com. Let me know what you want to hear more of, what you want me to get into, and we have no choice but to keep going and surviving. Try to feel more good days than bad days, and